covering today is 6.ns.3.8, and this is coordinate grids. The objective, students will be able to do two things. Number one, plot coordinates in the Cartesian plane, and number two, solve real-world problems using the coordinate grid, including finding the distance between 2 points using absolute values. Prior knowledge for this lesson is coordinate graphing and absolute values. So the problem for today is, if Rob's house is at coordinates 5, 8, and his friend Paul's house is at 5, 1, and each square on the grid represents one block, how many blocks would Rob have to ride his bike to get to Paul's house? The questions that you have to answer here is, where are the origins? The origin is at 0, 0, indicated here. The next question is, how do I plot Rob's house? Well, with the XY coordinates, Rob's house, 5, 8, we have to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 up, and mark the spot. The third question is, how do I plot Paul's house? Well, Paul's house is at coordinates XY of 5, 1. We do the same thing. Count 5 over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 up. And that's where Paul's house is. The final question you have to ask is, what is the distance between Rob and Paul's house? Well, we can do it in two ways. The first way is from the y component. Since the x is the same, the y component, taking y2 minus y1, and in this case, the absolute value of that is 1 minus 8, which equals -7. But the absolute value of a negative is a positive. So the distance between Rob and Paul's house is 7. The second method is you can count blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There is a total of 7 blocks between Rob and Paul's house. Here's a bigger version, and what you need to notice here is this is the x line and the y line, or the x-axis and the y-axis. This is our origin. At origin, x and y are both 0, right in the very middle. As we move to the right, x increases. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But as we go to the left, x decreases. -1, -2, -3, -4, etc. The next part is the quadrants. So when we're looking at our graph, we have to know what quadrants we talk about. Can you figure out which quadrant is 1, 2, 3, and 4? So there's 4 quadrants. And each quadrant is different. This quadrant, the x values are positive and the y values are positive, thus making this the first quadrant where x and y are both positive. Now the y-axis, as you go up, it increases from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. But when we go down from the origin on the y-axis, it decreases. 0, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6, etc. The third quadrant, x is still negative, just like in quadrant 2, but y is now negative. So x is negative and y is negative. This is the second quadrant, where now x is negative, but y is still positive. So any number in here, x will be negative and y will be positive. Now that we know all of our quadrants, quadrant 1 having x and y values both positive, quadrant 2 where the x value is negative but the y value is positive, quadrant 3 where the x and the y values are both negative, and quadrant 4 where the x values become positive again but our y values become negative. Our last quadrant, quadrant 4, is a combination of this quadrant and this quadrant, where all our x values become positive again, just like in quadrant 1, but all our y values are negative, like quadrant 3. So let's do an example. Now that we know our quadrants, and if we see a number that says 4, 2, both the x and the y values are positive. And in quadrant 1, we know that both the x and the y values are positive. So with a number 4, 2, we do it simple. We count out the 4 to the right, there's 2, there's 4, and then 2 up for our y value. So our number goes there. Now let's take a new set of coordinates. -4 and -2. Well, those are both positive. This is a negative x, which is good, but it's a positive y. That's not good. Quadrant 3 has negative x and negative y. Negative x, negative y. So this is going quadrant 3. And because it's 4, 2, -4, -2, we do our x first, -2, -4, and then -2. So our dot goes on -4, -2. The next number has an x value of -4 and a y value of 2, which is positive. Well, which quadrant has a negative x and a positive y? Quadrant 1 has a positive x, positive y. That's not it. Quadrant 2 has a negative x, positive y. Negative x, positive y. Quadrant 2, it looks like, is the right one. So we're going to take our x value, which is -4, -4, and our y value of +2, which is right there. So we go up and place our dot on -4, +2. Our last example has an y component of x of +4 and y of -2. Well, we've done all the other ones, so let's go right to quadrant 4, where it has a positive x and a negative y. And that's what we have, positive x with a negative y. Our x value is 4, 2, 4. Our y value is -2, which is here. So +4 and -2 is there. So before we were working with all positive numbers, but now we're seeing negative numbers because we can have more than one point in the different quadrants. So we're going to put it all together and we're going to find the difference or the distance between this point and this point. And how do we do that? First, we can do the difference of the two values that are different. And in this case, it's the 2 and the -2 by doing y2 minus y1. This being our y2 and this our y1. So what you can't forget is it has to be the absolute value. Just because it's negative, it's still positive when we're finding the distance between two lines. So y2 is -2 minus 2, and the absolute, that would be -2 minus 2 is -4, and the absolute value of -4 is 4. So the distance between the points 4, 2 and the points 4, -2 is 4. We also learned that you can count the number of blocks between the points. This is at 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, which was the same answer we got the other way. The last part of this is what you can also notice is that in this quadrant it's positive 4, positive 2. But on this quadrant it's negative 4, positive 2. Can we find the distance between this point and this point? Well, let's find out. Just like when we did the first one, we found the difference between the y values because the x values were the same. But this time the y values are the same and the x values are the same, so we need to find the difference between the x values. So it's the same thing. It's x2 minus x1. And once again, it's the absolute value. Well, x2 is negative 4 minus x1, which is 4, which is negative 8. But the absolute value is 8. So the distance between points 4, 2 and the point negative 4, 2 is 8. Now let's verify our answer of 8 between the point 4, 2 and the point negative 4, 2 by counting back 4 to 3, 2, 1, 0. 1, 2, 3, 4. 8. Well, that's all the time we have for today. But in conclusion, order pairs are written as x, y. The first number being the x-axis, the second number being on the y-axis. Remember to start at the origin, which is 0, 0. A positive x goes to the right, a negative x goes to the left on the horizontal axis. A positive y goes up, and the negative y goes down along the vertical axis. For more information, you can Google René Descartes.